Well, hello, With Gratitude Matt listeners. My name is Matt Moran, and I'm the host for the With Gratitude Matt show. Our goal with the show is to inspire our listeners to practice gratitude regardless of how powerful the storm is. What I've learned about the practice of gratitude, it works much like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to just say a special thanks to all of the friends, family, co-workers that have supported me while I've been on this cancer journey for the last several years. Your love and support and prayers means so much to me. Dan DeStefano is today's guest, and I've known Dan for over 50 years, and I'll throw him in the camp of a strong supporter of me while I've walked the journey that I'm on today. Dan today is the father of three. He runs his family business, which is involved in the construction business, DeStefano Custom Homes. But most importantly, he is a devout follower of Jesus Christ. Dan, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Matt. Gee whiz, I'm so honored, and thank you for having me on. I remember talking to you about possibly doing this show several years ago, and where you've come and how many people's lives you've touched, and the inspiration that you've given so many of us is just, words can't express it. And I'm grateful to have been your friend for so many years, and thanks again for having me on, and look forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. No, it's an honor to have you on, and you know, we're in this together. I'm not doing this alone, and it's through guys like yourself that are helping me stay afloat. Dan, we met where our families lived in the same community in Green Hills, Ohio. And that, to me, that was a really special place to grow up on La Crest. We met on La Crest. What do you recall about growing up in that neighborhood?
Well, I mean, I tell people this a lot when they ask me about, my childhood and growing up and whatnot, and it sounds kind of corny, but in a lot of ways, it was kind of like the old TV series Happy Days. It was just pretty kind of idyllic. We were out riding bikes together, playing in the woods together. There were so many kids that would just run around playing football, basketball, baseball in each other's yards, going to each other's houses. Anytime you ring the doorbell or whatnot, a mom would invite you in. Sometimes you'd sit down and have lunch together. Everybody kind of looked out for each other. It was safe. If somebody had a hardship or whatnot, people took care of each other. It just was a great, great place to grow up. And I mean, we're so fortunate to have had that experience in our childhood, because in a lot of ways, I think that helps form and shape, our future lives.
100%. And I echo all of that. One thing that you forgot to mention, though, there were times where we were not necessarily watching after other, and we found my brother and your brother trying to chop down a neighbor's tree with an axe. So,
Right. Well, I wasn't going to mention all the fun and games we had that weren't exactly the nicest things in the world, but ding dong ditch it, etc. But no, we had a great time.
it was for sure. It was a great place to grow up. And your grandfather, I have this picture vividly in my mind around how he was walking you around the neighborhood, down the street. You're right out front of our house, and it's your grandfather just simply said hello, introduced himself. You and I were 4 years old, and hard to believe that 50 years later, here we are today. And can you recall anything about us, meeting early on? Or
Absolutely, and see what happens when you actually stop to talk to somebody, a quote unquote neighbor, and just exchange niceties. 50 years later, you have a best friend to this day. So probably a lot more people should actually take the time to say hello to people. But my grandfather was a great man. I remember that was shortly after we moved in. You guys had already been living there, and we became fast friends ever since. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what a great journey, and what a great just opportunity to meet you and your family and share all these memories together.
Absolutely, we've had a lot together. So I think one of the things we had a great neighborhood community. But I think most importantly, we had two really strong, committed, faith-driven families in the DeStefanos and Morans that I think has, helped both of us get to where we are today. And as you think about, the Moran family and the DeStefano family and the way we were raised, I mean, is there anything that stands out to you that has helped you become the man that you are today?
Uh, Immeasurable, really immeasurable life lessons that were taught, the foundation of our faith that was taught, whether it be going to church on Sundays, whether it be treating each other with kindness, the Christian values that we were raised with and that, both of our families shared. It's really mad. It's been immeasurable. A lot of people stray a little bit over their lives when they grow up and mature and get into different things. But I always say that there's always been a foundation to come back to, no matter where I am. And in large part, that's because of my mom and dad, your mom and dad, my grandparents, and the foundation that they gave us, a Christian family, you just immeasurable.
Your mother, I just remember there were times my brother and I, we would deliberately want to have lunch at the DeStefanos because inevitably you guys just had better lunches than us. And your mom would, you boys want a sandwich? You want this, that? And she always was willing and ready to make doubles of whatever you guys were having.
Well, and that's just indicative of our neighborhood, and my mom is just a piece of that. But she loved all of our friends. She loved having people over. She loved you guys, and a lot of ways you can show love through food. And we always did have good eats. That's for sure.
Well, there's no question.
And you like to eat. So.
Well, you'd come to the Moran household for snacks.
Yes, and especially potato chips in a gigantic metal barrel.
That's
if
true.
You know what I'm talking about. Remember that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it was
Charlie's.
Heinzman or something like that.
I think it was Charlie's. Okay. Yeah.
No, but yeah, we had quite the food cabinet. But so Dan, as we talk about your mother, and there's just such a wonderful and giving lady, always open arms. Unfortunately, she lost the fight with cancer in 2010, but she fought hard until the day she went home to her eternal home. And if you think about Sue DeStefano, your mother, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, gee whiz. A lot of things come to mind. My mom was so kind. She had just such a loving heart. She was extremely empathetic to people who were hurting or downtrodden or the underdog. Very generous woman. She was pretty much the glue that kept the family going. She loved her family. She loved my friends. She loved my brother and sister's friends. She loved her parents. She was such a family woman. She was extremely strong. Like you, when she was battling her cancer, it was never really about her. She always wanted to make an impression and help others, even though she was going through her battle. So she left a great legacy. And she touched so many people's lives. We definitely miss her, but she's always remembered, and very tough times, but we're grateful for the life and the times we had with her, for sure.
That's beautiful. And as I've mentioned before, anybody that's ever fought cancer, I'm eternally grateful for it, because every patient, the medical teams are making advancements in the disease. And I'm really grateful for the advancements that, that they're learning from. And while she lost her life in 2010, she didn't lose her life to cancer, because really she lived her life, as you talked about, full and with love, with intention. And, I'm just grateful for having known her. And I know she's looking down and proud of both of us for what we're doing.
Yes, Maddie, and she loves you, and she loves your family, and thank you. Appreciate that.
So, Dan, if I just like to move a little bit to the world we live in right now, and I touched on it in their introduction and how committed you are to your faith. But today we live in a world that there's so much hatred, there's so much divide, and I think many people are really struggling with how Jesus and how God might play a part in the life that they're living. Do you have anything to say as it relates to other people that may either maybe just be agnostic or just not embracing God and Jesus Christ and how they could be involved in our life?
Well, it's a pretty broad subject, and we could probably have 3 or 4 podcasts to answer that in depth. But at the end of the day, we live in a pretty evil world. And the more hatred and the more divided that we are, the devil wins. And it's intentional. And when God is taken out of the public square, taken out of institutions, taken out of schools, taken out of the culture, and again, that's been very intentional for several decades now. It's easy for the world to creep in, combined with the garbage that a lot of the Hollywood media and culture is telling us is good, that we're being force fed. So I guess to answer your question, having a faith in God, having Christian values helps reduce that noise, helps give you hope that there is good in the world, there is kindness, there are good people. Block out the noise, know what's important, look upward to what's important, rest on your values that you and I both were taught as kids, and we've learned to instill in our lives. And you can face a world that is ever increasingly just portraying not good things. I'm trying to articulate it in a nice way.
Yep.
But so to have faith, if you don't, it's hard to block some of this stuff out, and you start living a life that's probably not the right way to live it.
It's great. If I'm just being honest with you, Dan, I think we've talked about this before over the years. There's been periods of my life where I feel like God's been just, I would say, more at the forefront, kind of right where he is right now today. And if I'm being honest, the times where I wasn't as close to him, I felt like my life was kind of wavering. It wasn't like I wasn't all in. And I just curious if you've ever experienced situations in your life where maybe you've perhaps drifted, and is there a similar experience where you feel maybe more where you're more on track with recognizing where he is in your life and how present he is in your life? How do you feel differently than maybe in periods where he may not have been as present or as
Right.
acutely aware?
Right. Well, we all stray. And
Yep.
there's been several times, years, where, he wasn't forefront and center in my life. And what does that look like? A lot of anxiety, a lot of bad choices, a lot of decisions that I wish I wouldn't have made that have ripple effects. I'll go back to, the good news is that no matter how we stray, no matter how far we go off the path, if you have that foundation, like we talked about earlier, and a solid foundation, you can always go back to that. That's always something that will recenter you, recalibrate you. So it's so critical to have that faith, um, so that it can ground you. Not necessarily when things are going bad around you, but as importantly, when things are going good. I think a lot of times people, when things are going good in their life, whether it's their job or their marriage or with their friends or their girlfriend or their kids, whatever it may be, when things are going good, I think a lot of times we forget um, who's there with us, Christ, and we think we're doing it on our own, and we stray, and we can't do this on our own. And so the faith and the foundation that I have and that you have, um, even if we get off kilter a little bit, we can come back to that, and it'll give us perspective, and a way forward, um, and a basis to draw from. I think is kind of maybe the answer I'd give you.
Awesome. Dan, talking about tough times, and everybody faces tough times, but you're, call it 2006 all the way through 2014 was a rough patch for you. You had your grandmother's death, your mother's fight with cancer. You had a friend that passed away during that period, and then you also had a marriage that ended in divorce. During that storm, and talking about periods of time when Jesus was in your life. I mean, what did you learn during that period about Jesus Christ's presence in your life as you were going through that long period of
Right.
difficulty?
Well, kind of give you a little perspective on that, if you're okay with that, just to
Yep.
give your listeners a little bit of a very high level timeline, because like you said, it wasn't really one storm. It was wave after wave after wave, year after year after year. And just to kind of encapsulate that from a chronological perspective, 2006, I got divorced from my first wife, after about a 7-year marriage, which was not very good. And it was a brutal divorce. 2008, my grandmother, who I was extremely close to, you knew her very well.
Yep.
She passed away. 2009, my uncle, my mom's brother, he passed away with ALS. I was very close to him. Subsequently, I got remarried in 2009, and although that's been an absolutely fantastic thing in my life, it still was somewhat stressful in those times, blending a family. 2010, my mom passed away, with her battle with cancer. Right in there was the 2008, 2009 housing bubble, which, we were hemorrhaging money and assets just to try to keep the company going. And then fast forward to 2014, I get a call that my best friend from college committed suicide, which was extremely unexpected because I just talked to him like a week before that, and there was absolutely no indication that would ever happen with him. So I just wanted to kind of give you that perspective because it just kept going and going and going. And like you mentioned, I gave my mom's eulogy, I gave my grandma's eulogy, and my friend Chris Brown's eulogy too. And there's a lot in that time frame to deal with. So I guess the question was, how did my faith, what
Play a
did
part
that
in
look
that.
like
Yep.
through that?
Yep. Yep.
Ironically, and maybe counterintuitively to some people, it got stronger. The more that happened to me, and the greater the challenge and whatnot, the stronger my faith got. I never questioned. Never questioned, not one day, not then, not now have I ever questioned why. I asked for guidance, I asked for comfort, I asked for help. And, there's things in this world that we can't explain. There's things in this world that we obviously don't want to happen, but there's a plan. And I relied on my faith, and that's really, I don't know how people without faith would have gotten through that, or some of the things that a lot of people go through. I'm not unusual. Everybody goes through hard times. But I relied on my faith very, very heavily. And as a result, it wasn't easy, but, got through it.
You're stronger as a result of it. You know,
Absolutely.
Dan, you mentioned Chris, and boy, I remember some great times that we had together. He loved the outdoors. He loved hiking in the mountains. I remember coming down to visit you guys down in Tennessee, and we'd hike through the mountains up there. And Chris was just a big lover of, God's creation out in the wilderness, and I know you are as well. What do you attribute Chris's love for God's beauty in the mountains and the wilderness to your? Is there a correlation between your love for that and Chris's expression of that?
Absolutely. Chris and another friend of ours who you know very well, Greg Weaver, and I, my first backpacking trip down there was with Chris. We've been all over the country backpacking, enjoying the outdoors. Chris was a lover. Um, Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. He was a lover
That's
of the
it.
outdoors. He and I shared that. And there's something about the mountains and the rivers. There's an energy. It I explain to people all the time that that's my happy place. That's God's cathedrals to me. I see the beauty in the Lord every single time I step outside. Um, and Chris did too, and we shared that together. And there's a lot to be said about nature and in the natural world um, that we live in. And I certainly don't take that for granted. I'll never forget the memories that he and I shared. Some of the adventures, some of the crazy times that we had. You know, um, it was special. And every time I'm back in the mountains, he's there with me in spirit. And he, like my mom and like so many others, will never be forgotten.
That is so beautiful. Dan, one of the things that I thought about as I was kind of getting ready for the show, and I know you joined a Bible study a few years ago to enrich your relationship with God and get to know Him better. So often men, I think, have a really tough time opening up about, their relationship with Jesus Christ. Two-part question, Dan. Number one, what motivated you to get involved in a Bible study first and foremost? And then secondly, what did you experience by being involved in that group?
Right. And you're absolutely right. One of the things that men don't like to do is share, especially their feelings. It's hard for us to do. Um, so the Bible study came out of a few years of really getting deep into the Bible, really studying Scripture. When COVID hit and churches were shut down, I really started an in-depth look at the Bible. I hadn't done that in a long, long time, and the fruits of that really, really inspired me and helped me grow in my walk with Christ. We can get into that a little bit more if you'd like to, but out of that came a Bible study. Well, it was more of a prayer group actually, and that was directly because of one of my friendships, a guy who Neil too, who went to high school with us.
Yep.
He pretty much organized that. He's a strong man of faith, and he brought several fellas together for that, and it was awesome. It was a great way to really get deep and experience the love of Christ through prayer. And I don't think we pray enough or the right way sometimes. And not that there's a right way and there's a wrong way. So don't get me wrong, prayer's great, no matter what. Praying's great, and everybody has their own way of praying. So I don't mean to say there's a right way or wrong way, but it was great. really taught me a lot, and I still use that today in my life. And I've been able to teach other people how to do that as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Dan. I just, as I sit here, there's several people I can think of that, for whatever reason, just are resisting, and love your perspective. Men, I'm talking specifically men. Do you have any advice for somebody that may not, they're just questioning their faith? Maybe not totally agnostic, but they're just questioning it. Is there anything that you think that they might consider doing to give Christ a chance?
I struggle with this as well, Matt, because I try to evangelize people who aren't exactly there in their faith. Sometimes they have questions. Sometimes I just come out and ask them. And there's a lot of fellas, I'm sure you know a lot of guys that are struggling. And I would just say, give it a chance. Talk to somebody who you trust. It's normal to have questions. It's normal to have doubts. It's normal to listen to today's world and today's society. It's easy not to be a Christian. It's easy to just live your life without that moral compass a lot of times, because it's not fun. Being a Christian is hard. We are somewhat outsiders in today's culture and today's society. Men do not like talking about it. I don't think I'm answering your question probably all that good.
No, that's great.
But give it a try. Talk to somebody that you trust. Talk to a friend. Talk to me. Talk to you. I bet you we could convince you that it's not all that bad.
You touched on something earlier, and I didn't comment on it, but you just talked to you coming out of the difficult period. I mean, you said it yourself that you were enriched in your faith during 2006 to 2014. And I can tell you that through my experience that I've had over the last 4 years or so, that I feel closer to God than I've ever felt in my life. The only thing I would say to that end is I've made a commitment to myself to, regardless of where my life is, to not ever let it get back to where it might have been. I need to be where I am right now from a faith perspective, because that's exactly where Jesus Christ wants me. He wants us in his arms. And I never want to go back to something else. And it's
Amen,
a very
brother.
it's a very refreshing and very comforting place to be.
Absolutely, Matt. And as you know, he centers us. He gives us hope. No matter how hard the struggle is, you're a perfect example. And it's never too late. And I don't ever want to go back to where I was either. Not that we don't stray and we don't fall, but I certainly never want to go back to where I was. We've come too far, Matt. I've come too far in my faith, and I am extremely happy where I am. But there's always room to grow, and so I stay the course, man, because that's the way to go.
Absolutely. Dan, just talking a little bit about scripture, one of my favorites comes from the Matthew 18:20. I love Matthew. Every time we're reading Matthew in the Catholic Church, my sister Maura will kind of tap her. I'll be like, this is my favorite gospel. Hence carries the same name as me. But
Right.
It's for where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am among them. Do you have any favorite Bible verses or scriptures that kind of help you with your journey that you're on in following Jesus Christ?
Absolutely. And I love that one. My brother and I say that a lot of times when we're talking about God. And so I love that one from Matthew. I've got a few. I'm really bad with remembering verse and whatnot, but the ones that come to mind would be one of the most obvious ones would be John 3:16. For God gave His only begotten Son, that for whoever believes in Him will not perish but will have eternal life. I think that's kind of one of the
Yep.
most foundational verses in the Bible of Scripture. Philippians 4:13 is a great one. All things through Christ who strength. All things are possible through Christ who strengthens me. I like one in Romans where it says, "Whoever's with God, who can be against us?" And then there's one in Luke. I think it's Luke 14, and it basically says, "To whom much is given, much is expected," and
That's an awesome one.
that drives a lot of my life. At least I try to have it drive my life, because I believe I've been extremely blessed, and I believe it's extremely important to give back, to help, not forget where you came from, and it's imperative of us to give.
Dan, that's precisely why we're doing the show. I mean, that's exactly why we're doing the show. We're trying to help other people, and that's beautiful. Dan, as we have a show around gratitude, and by the way, you're one of my most active listeners. I've got two of them out there. You're the top one, and then I got my brother Bill, who also listens periodically.
Hey, Bill.
No, we got more than that. We've got a good following. But as we got a show around gratitude, Dan, what does gratitude mean to you, and what do you think about when you hear the word gratitude?
I think about you. Not joking. I've always been pretty grateful. I never put it into perspective until your journey and talking to you about your journey in this show, your podcast. So when I think about gratitude, the very first thing I think about is Matt Moran. Kid you not.
Thank you, Dan.
So good job. But gratitude, again, I've used this word, I guess, a couple of times probably in our talk today, but it keeps me grounded. It keeps me centered. It keeps me thankful, especially when I'm having, quote unquote, a bad day, or I'm feeling sorry for myself. I need to sit back, and oftentimes I do, and just kind of mentally slap myself and say, listen, there's so much to be thankful for. There's so much to be grateful for. Friends, family, just so many things in my life that I am grateful for, and it supersedes, way supersedes all the bad things. So I'm just very thankful for where I am, where I've been. I'm thankful for all the hard times, because that's what shapes us. And I'm grateful to be here today talking to you. I'm grateful of our friendship. And yeah, that's what.
Who would have thunk we'd had a show around this 35 years ago, right?
Who would, us two knuckleheads? No way. The odds were not probably going to be too good back in high school if you would have asked anybody.
No, this is great. So great to have you on today's show, Dan. We got one wrap-up question. It's kind of deep. I mean, I've known you for 50 years. You've had your share of hurdles in your life. But is there any one in particular that, had that not happened, you don't think you'd be the man that you are today? And if so, I'd love to hear about how that hurdle, helped you grow and develop into the Dan DeStefano of 2022.
Yeah, great question. And there's several. I think the one that I would say would be one of the most impactful would be my divorce, and the fallout from that, and the ripple effects of a divorce. In my case, and hopefully in other people's cases, but in my case, when you go through a divorce, a lot of times, and it's not unusual that you get 50% custody of your children. And as brutal of a deal that divorce was, and everything that goes along with that, and as sad as it is, especially for the children, what it taught me was that every waking minute I had with my kids, and when I got divorced, my oldest son was 5 and my youngest son was 3, so they were young. But I think when you're married and you haven't gone through that, you take a lot of times, it's probably more so men, take the time they have with their kids for granted, because they're always going to come home. I mean, you go to work, you travel, you do whatnot, your kids are always going to be there. So when you go through a divorce and you only have 50% custody, what I learned was every single waking minute was precious. And, I think a lot of times people don't have that perspective if they don't go through that time of crisis. So since the day that happened, I really put a lot of emphasis and value on being there for them, coaching them, never missing anything, really kind of shaping my career and my life around them, especially when they were younger. And so out of that storm came that perspective, and I think it's been a really good deal.
You're a better father probably as a result. You're just more present to them.
That's right.
All the time.
And that's one of your mottos. Yeah.
Yep. So Dan, I'm so grateful to have you on today's show. I'd like to just say thank you for your friendship. Thank you for all the support, and all of my friends and family. Thank you for all the support that you've shared as I'm on my journey. Dan, you're a remarkable man. You're a great father, friend, and follower of Jesus Christ. Listening audience, pay attention to some of the things that Dan's done to get closer to Jesus Christ and to get to know him. He is right in front of you. And I'll tell you from experience, having him in your life is so rewarding. It's so refreshing. It's so comforting. You're an amazing person, Dan, and I just really appreciate everything that you've done for me over the 5 decades that we've known each other. As I've talked in the past, everybody faces hurdles in their life. And, I try to do 3 things each and every day to keep the tracks, the wheels on the track. First and foremost, I try to find something I'm grateful for, regardless of how powerful the storm is today. Secondly, be truly present. You would be amazed at the gifts that are right in front of you if you're just present to those that you're with. And lastly, pay attention to how you're feeding your mind, body, and soul. Today's guest was my good friend, Dan DeStefano. If today's show inspired you in some way, shape, or form, subscribe to the show, comment on it, and share it with others. With gratitude, Matt listeners, until next time, find the courage to be grateful. Godspeed, my friends.